Hello to all the attendees of Journalism in Global Context. We try to look for reports on Africa's economy in German and French media, and just to make statements about the quality and quantity of the reporting. And we did researches in different media. We looked at German online magazines, we looked at German television shows, at German radio programs, and also French online magazines, since we have Anne in our group, who's an Erasmus student from France, and you could say she's an expert in that in that field. So but before we get to the different media, let me just give you a quick theoretic introduction. Okay, so it's no secret that that there's a lot of room for improvement in foreign reporting. I mean, eventually, to better the foreign reporting is even the reason why we started journalism in global context. So a lot of scholars wrote about the topic too. One of them is Arnold S. D. Bear, which we focused on in our research groups, and for one, he argued that foreign news is often very incident-based and just focus on catastrophes and war. He also says that foreign reporters often just focus on elite leaders instead of just giving the opinion of the society or the average man on the streets. Third, he says that there's a lot of simplification in foreign news. An example would be a victim-villain discourse in which one group is idealized while the other is demonized. And and at last he argues that foreign events are often just read from a Western perspective, which means that the Western people put their values and their ideals inside the reporting instead of trying to understand the context of the foreign society. Okay, so I think all of these criteria, if all of these criteria match with the report, you could say that it definitely has a. You could say that this report it says a lot about the minor quality of a report. You could say. So let's just see how far these dangers fit and match to the reports that we observe.
Okay, I start talking about the online media in Germany. I observed two different online news platforms in terms of the economic news from Africa. One was Zeit Online, an online platform by a well-known newspaper here in Germany, which is often considered as reliable in general. And here I just found two reports which include African economy. One article was about biological economy, and there Africa is mentioned in just one short sentence. It is used for negative example how bioeconomy caused that people lost their land in Africa. But the other one was only about Africa. It is about the billion euro promise at the World Climate Conference, which was given by countries like Germany and France there. The other online media I took a closer look on is Wirtschaftswoche, a German magazine for economy news. And there I found 5 reports, which include African economy. In 4 of them, the main theme wasn't only on Africa. The articles focused on more general themes like the World Climate Conference, refugee policy, or global warming. Africa and its economy was mentioned in 1 or 2 sentences. For example, again, the billion euro promise, or the fact that Africa is quite affected by global warming, which is shown in many droughts in some regions. Those droughts weaken the agriculture and thus the people who are dependent on it. But one article, again, was just about Africa and economy, and it is about Ethiopia as a new star of African economy. Yeah, so let's focus on this article. The article tells the reader about the great projects of new infrastructure in the country, like the new metro, and it names China as a great investor in this case, but it also criticizes the lack of political opposition in the country, or the fact that there are still too many poor people who cannot benefit from these new developments. A middle class is needed, the authors say. So yeah, this is just a short summary what is told in this article. Yeah. From my point of view, I would say that the text is a good example for foreign report. At first, of course, it isn't about a catastrophe. The article isn't really it isn't superficial. It's well researched, and yeah, you get more information than just a simple overview. It is quite informative. It highlights the pros and the cons of this development. Yeah, and it refers to all Ethiopian people, not only the elite in the country. Yeah, so, and it also, of course, criticizes, which is an important aspect too for a good article. So I would say, yes, a good example for foreign reporting on Africa, and it would be interesting to read more articles like that. Yeah, the article from Site Online I found only about Africa was the one about the €1 million promise for Africa at the climate conference. A few information about the article. The article is a short abstract of what was promised at the climate conference. It describes the countries. It describes that countries like Germany and France want to give Africa their support to invest in the climate change in Africa. It also explained why Africa needs the money to improve the energy supply in Africa, and it kind of value this promise by referring to experts. I hope. Yeah. Okay. So I would say it isn't as good as the other example I showed you, but it is enough to be quickly informed by this article, and it is a short summary of what is promised, of what countries like Germany and France promised to Africa. It gives an overview, and it also goes a little bit in detail by explaining why the help is needed and by valuing it, by referring to an expert from WWF, an environment protection organization. And yeah, so there's the level of criticism, kind of, which is important. And yeah, it isn't only about catastrophes, it gives them a great overview. So this was it from my side.
Okay, I analyzed how German TV magazines report about African economy, and therefore I watched 4 of the biggest economy magazines in German TV. One was Weltbilder, and the other Plus Minus from ARD, and the other 2 were Auslandsjournal and Wieso from ZDF. Both are public broadcasters in Germany. And the evaluation period was 1 month from the 11th of November to the 10th of December. And in all this period I only found 2 reports about African economy. And in 2 magazines, Wieso and Plus Minus, next one, in both magazines I found nothing about Africa or African economy in the last months. There were some reports about refugees in general, and here the topics were Syrian refugees and also refugees on the Balkan route, and also how refugees might affect the German economy. And if there were any reports about foreign economy, they were mostly about working conditions in India or about the origin of textiles in German shops or something like that. And In the Auslandsjournal, I found one report about Eritrea, and here the topic was the national service young people have to do there since the fight for independence with Ethiopia 25 years ago. And the report was only about 5 minutes long, and it focused on the living conditions of young people, and it depicted this national service and as one of the most important reasons for the escape to Europe. And in this report, the country is depicted as a police state where people are not able to talk freely about their opinion or make their own decisions. And nevertheless, it's quite balanced because there are several quotes from different sources, like people on the streets or officials, businessmen, and there are different opinions. For example, one man on the street says that it's not that bad in Eritrea to live there, and that the West has made up a wrong picture of the country to weaken the state. And there's no direct reference to Germany in the report, but it's depicted how the European Union supports Eritrea to build new economic perspectives for young people, so that they don't have to flee the country anymore. And even if it's only 5 minutes long, it seems quite informative, but it's also slightly Eurocentric, and it doesn't really provide many background informations about the country because it's only 5 minutes long. And the other report I found was in the magazine Weltbilder, and it was a portrait about a refugee from Sierra Leone who tried to go to Europe, but he didn't succeed, and now he lives back in his home country again. And it's about the hopelessness of young people from poor families in Sierra Leone because they don't have any perspectives. And there's quite a big reference to Germany because the protagonist, he got donations from Germany and now is able to study at university in Sierra Leone, and he studies journalism. And the report is mostly about him and doesn't provide many information about the economic situation in Sierra Leone, and it's also about 5 minutes long. And some kind of conclusion. There are quite few reports about African economy on German TV. Only these 2 in the last month in these 4 magazines. And economy only plays a minor role in these reports, and it's more about individuals, and there was only always a reference to Germany or to Europe, and seldom there were positive facts, and mostly it was about problems.
So I searched for German radio reports on the economy in Africa, and just like Nora, I picked one international magazine and one business magazine, both from the public info channel WDR5. In my opinion, it didn't make sense to look for reports at private stations, since entertainment rather than information is of course their main business. The international magazine I observed is called Echo der Welt, which means Echo of the World. The problem is broadcasted in weekly terms. Every Sunday afternoon you can hear it, and it's 25 minutes long, which means that there are 3 to 5 reports on every show. I listened to each show from October the 4th to December the 6th, and I found 4 reports on Africa. Only one of these reports was about economic issues. Okay, so the business magazine that I examined is called Profit. It is also 25 minutes long, but it's broadcasted from Monday to Saturday. And I followed it for a month, from November the 8th to December the 8th. And in all of these 24 shows that I listened to, that were part of my evaluation, I only found one single report on economy in Africa. But before I get to that, let me discuss in detail what the report of the international magazine was about. Okay, so as I said, there were 4 reports in Echo of the World. The first one was about Sudanese refugees in Kenya. The second one was about a startup video game company in Ghana and Nigeria. And the third dealt with sanitation in Mozambique. And the last one, it was about student protests in South Africa. Since our task was to focus on economic issues, I only analyzed the second report that I mentioned, the one about the video game firms in Ghana and Nigeria. Okay. What seemed very striking to me was how the anchorman led into this report. Let me read out loud what he said. He said, civil war, child soldiers, warlords, human rights violations, AIDS, orphans, catastrophic droughts, genocide, starvation, flood, disaster. When we think about Africa, words like that are coming to our mind, but not computer games. Because we see Africa as a problematic continent, we tend to forget that there are a lot of smart people with fantasy and creativity. I didn't really know what to make of this introduction. First, what he said definitely represents quite well what a lot of Western people think about Africa. But on the other hand, I do not feel that it's necessary to emphasize this stereotypical image and use it as a contrast whenever a journalist is reporting something positive about Africa. And with that being said, the report is something you could define as good news. It deals with 2 young companies, Lady Arts and, I hope I say it right, Malijo Games, who strive to be the pioneers of an African video game market. And the heroes of the video games are Ghanaian folklore characters, or characters from the everyday life of the Nigerian streets. Nana Obuso from Lady Arts explains why he invented characters like that. He said, why is it always the West that has to do cool things? We want young children to get the feeling that Africa is a great place to grow up. With quotes like that, the report is also critical of the Western influence on the African entertainment market. Yeah, but before I get into too much detail of what the report is about, let me just quickly summarize if the report is a typical example of the often adverse and problematic foreign reporting, or if it's not. First, it doesn't focus on the negative like many other reports do. Both the risks and the chances in the new video game market are presented, and for example, the market is very young and it offers a lot of opportunities. But if 500 people download your game, it doesn't mean that you make a lot of money. You need to find a lot of partners for advertisement and find options, for example, to let the people pay for extra content in the game. Because of the pictures like that, the report is definitely well balanced, and it doesn't just focus on the negative or the positive. It is like journalism should be, as you can say. Second, the journalist doesn't really occupy a Western perspective. His stance is very neutral, and the reference to the West are only made by the interview partners themselves. One of them is the quote that I just read out 2 to 3 minutes ago. And lastly, the report is not superficial at all. It doesn't just focus on economic aspects, but also ask the questions like, do these video games have something like an identity establishing aspect too? Overall, you could say that it's a very gloomy example of foreign reporting about Africa. The journalist definitely does not promote something like a stereotypical view on the continent, and manages to give a very well balanced report. Okay, as I said, other report on economic issues I found was broadcasted in the business magazine Profit, and it's a 3-minute coverage on the Lake Turkana wind power project in Kenya, and which is the biggest wind park in the whole African continent. So yeah, just like the first report, it's certainly not focused on something negative. You could also categorize it as good news. And you could even say that the tenor is too positive, because the journalist tries to introduce the wind power project without being skeptical about one single fact, and all that it takes is just one little click to Wikipedia, and you find out that the wind project isn't unproblematic at all. For example, the project doesn't comply with national, international, and regional laws that protect indigenous rights. So yeah, you could definitely find an oppositional party there. Proper to this very uncritical approach, the report only gives quotes from allied people who speak highly of the project. For example, the Director General of the project, President Kenyatta even, or a representative of Samsung France. And other than that, the report is a bit superficial too. The project in itself explained in detail, but without any oppositional view, as I said before. It's just one perspective, and yeah, a multi-layered issue is depicted in just one sense, one simple way. Okay. So what can we conclude? I mean, definitely that is definitely very difficult to even find reports on the economy of Africa, and sometimes the same researchers are even reused in different programs. For example, the report on the sanitation in Mozambique is not just used in WDR5, it was also broadcasted at NDR Info or Deutschland Radio, which are public channels too, but as you see, yeah, it's not like they have many correspondents who could touch different topics in different countries. So yeah, and second, the very few reports that exist do not show the typical shortcomings of foreign correspondence. Surprisingly, both reports focus on good news rather than catastrophes or war. And yeah, the second report can even be it can be criticized for a lot of things, but not the typical things somebody would criticize when it comes to foreign news. So all in all, I would say that the foreign correspondents are doing a job, not doing a job at all. That is constructing a fake image of Africa. The problem is rather the quantity than the quality of foreign correspondence. Okay.
So, I'm going to do the last part about the French perspective with a press review. So, I based my analysis on 2 French newspapers, Les Echos, which is really specialized in economy, and Le Figaro, which is politically right-oriented and really interested in economy. And I think among all the newspapers, not specialized in economy, is the one we speaks the most about economy. So I focus on 5 topics. 5 topics, yeah. So first, what was the semester reunion of OPEC countries, and Les Echos dealt peculiarly about Nigeria, because so they explained that Nigeria is against Saudi Arabia decision to exploiting at maximum oil, and they don't want to do that. So they are trying to support their money, La Naria, if I pronounce it right. But the problem is they can't really support their money because it's really difficult without oil to do it. Because 70% of their growth is based on oil, and it's the first time since 2000 that they have decreasing growth,
And so Les Echos seem particularly worried about Nigeria because they explained that maybe this lack of growth could lead some Nigerian to migrate to Europe, or there will be problems with overpopulation and everything. So they were concerned about it, but they explained it really well. The second topic, both newspapers talked about it because it was, so in France there is the climate conference, so and François Hollande, the French president, he committed to invest $2 billion in renewable energies in Africa. So it's more a loan than an investment, but still it's the first time that something like that is done. And Les Echos had a really pedagogical approach. They explained really well what was about, how the money was about to be spent. That 7 African out of 10 don't have electricity, and that electrification would be the biggest part of this project. But Le Figaro focused more on other projects like the Green Wall to get rid of desertification and to fix it at least, and the part also of the World Bank, which will invest $5.6 million for this project. So the next topic is the visit of Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, in Africa. Because Xi Jinping said that he would invest $60 billion during 3 years for African development and in particular industrialization. Le Figaro was not really good at it. It was only pure facts and breaking news, but not really analysis. But Les Echos contextualized it more. And for example, they said that Zimbabwe's president criticized a former colonist and said that China was better because they were trying to help them and not to just exploit them. And also that Ethiopia would be the first country to receive this help. The next topic is about French media. Canal Plus is a French TV channel, and they both reported that there were a new partnership between Canal Plus and iRocco, which is can be qualified as African Netflix. And the Figaro article was more detailed because they explained that Canal Plus has already assets in Africa because they launched 25 channels, all French speaking. And in general point of view, Figaro is really interested in. They have really a point of view about media and report a lot about media's market. And the last topic could maybe seem insignificant, but I found it interesting anyway, and only Le Figaro reported it. It was a French company, which is a subsidiary of Air France, which is an airplane company. They have been responsible for opening the first Burger King in Western Europe. So there are already Burger Kings, the fast food channel in North Africa, but the first one in Western Africa. And it can be surprising because it's a French company who has been a child of it,
and because they already done it in Fort-de-France, which is in Martinique in the Caribbean Sea, and this island belongs to France, so well, is a part of France at least. So it's the first time that something like that would happen because it's in a foreign country, and maybe it could lead to something, to a bigger partnership. We don't know, but I found this information really interesting. So to conclude about French newspaper, in general way of speaking, French newspapers are really self-centered and always speak about French and relationships with France. Sorry. So except the topic about China and Africa, only France was concerned by the newspapers, and we can say that the articles are seldom about Africa, especially African economy, but they are quite complete and clear, and I found them really interesting.
Okay, after hearing what all these different reports were about, what can we conclude? I think what I said about the radio program, it also goes for the other media. The problem is less the quality, it's more the quantity of the reporting. And all of these aspects, which are often come in hand when it comes to criticizing foreign correspondents, I think they don't really match with the reports that we observed. Because I think, for example, a lot of the reports are rather focusing on good developments and good news instead of negative things. A reason for that might be that new markets are really just starting to develop in Africa. Markets that we take for granted, like the fast food chains or the video game market. So, if I think what we as journalism in global context can do is to focus on these new, on other new developments in the economy of Africa, and treat them like and report about them in the same way like the journalists did in our reports. I think then we are in a good way. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention. And yeah, greetings to Ethiopia. Have a nice day. Thank you.